The Colorado Rockies don't forgive mistakes in January. When the blizzard hit Vail Pass that night, visibility dropped to zero, ice turned asphalt into glass, and temperatures plunged to -20. Olivia Sterling, the ruthless CEO who'd fired thousands without blinking, found her $60,000 SUV spinning helplessly toward a ravine. Death waited in the white. But sometimes, salvation comes from the most unexpected places, like the headlights of a rusted Ford, driven by the night janitor she'd never bothered to notice. Stay with me, because what happened in that whiteout changed everything, and the truth about who saved, who will leave you breathless. The fluorescent lights of Sterling Tower's 42nd floor hummed their familiar midnight song as Ethan Carter guided his industrial buffer across marble that already gleamed like black ice. His reflection moved beneath him, a ghost in navy coveralls, methodical and precise. 6 months into this job, and he'd developed a rhythm: start high, work down, finish in the lobby by 4:30. Time enough to grab groceries before Lily woke for school. His calloused hands adjusted the machine's weight with the same careful attention he'd once used to stabilize wounded soldiers in Afghan mountain passes. Different mission now. Same discipline. 20 floors above, Olivia Sterling stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Denver's lights blur through falling snow. The boardroom behind her still reeked of fear and expensive cologne, the aftermath of another hostile acquisition. Meridian Dynamics had tried to poach 3 of her top engineers. She'd responded by buying their satellite company and gutting it within hours. The financial press would call it brilliant. Ruthless. Classic Sterling. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Her reflection stared back, platinum hair still perfect after 16 hours, designer suit worth more than most people's cars, eyes that had forgotten how to show weakness. Somewhere behind those eyes, exhaustion gnawed like hunger. 3 nights without real sleep. 4, maybe. The pills weren't working anymore. In a modest apartment across town, 7-year-old Lily Carter slept curled around a stuffed wolf named Scout, her breathing soft but slightly labored in the dry winter air. The blue inhaler on her nightstand caught streetlight through thin curtains. Ethan had checked it before leaving 2 puffs left, refill ordered for Friday. His veterans' benefits covered most of it. The janitor job covered the rest. Pride wasn't a luxury single fathers could afford. The Weather Service had been warning about the storm system for days. Arctic air mass meeting Pacific moisture over the continental divide. Classic Colorado recipe for disaster. But forecasters always exaggerated, and Sterling Technologies' quarterly report was due Monday. Olivia grabbed her keys from the mahogany desk. A drive to Vail would clear her head. The Audi Q7 had all-wheel drive, heated everything. She'd driven through worse. Ethan noticed her in the parking garage, just a glimpse of platinum hair and decisive stride as she passed his old F-150. He'd seen her exactly twice in 6 months, both times from a distance. The night shift existed in a different universe from the C-suite. Invisible people maintaining visible empires. He waited until her taillights vanished before starting his truck. The engine coughed twice before catching. 200,000 miles and counting, but she'd never let him down. The weather radio crackled warnings about deteriorating conditions on I-70. All mountain passes reporting heavy snow, chain laws in effect. The interstate climbed into darkness. Olivia pushed the Audi harder than wisdom suggested, chasing the illusion that speed could outrun the weight, crushing her chest. The acquisition had been perfect. Textbook. So why did victory taste like ash? Her father would have been proud, would have been, if pride had existed in his vocabulary for anything she'd done. Even dying, Harrison Sterling had managed to make her feel small. You run emotions like a man, he'd wheezed from his hospital bed, but you'll never have their respect. Snow began as suggestion, tiny specks dancing in the headlights. Then curtains, then walls. The temperature gauge on Olivia's dashboard dropped from 28 to 15 to 7. Wind buffeted the SUV, pushing it toward the shoulder. She slowed, finally, but mountain storms don't negotiate. Vail Pass rose ahead, a white tunnel where sky and earth merged into nothing. Ethan kept his truck at steady 35, feeling the road through the steering wheel the way he'd once felt for injuries through field dressings, careful, patient, reading signs others missed. The storm was accelerating beyond predictions. His phone, mounted on the cracked dashboard, showed Lily's goodnight message from hours earlier. Love you, Daddy. Scout says be safe. He'd be home before she woke. Always was. The Audi's computer systems couldn't interpret what happened next. One moment, controlled descent. The next, black ice and wind shear created a perfect storm of physics. Olivia felt the rear wheels break free, that sick weightless moment when technology stops mattering. Training kicked in turn into the skid, don't brake, but the mountain had already decided. The SUV pirouetted gracefully across both lanes, clipped the guardrail, and slid backward down the embankment. Metal shrieked. Glass held, somehow. The world inverted twice before settling at a 30-degree angle, nose buried in snow, rear wheels spinning against nothing. Silence. Then the engine died. Then darkness as the electronics failed. Olivia's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Blood in her mouth bit tongue, not serious. The seatbelt held her at an awkward angle. Snow was already building against the windshield. No cell signal. The temperature inside began dropping immediately. Her designer coat, cashmere and wool, was built for Denver restaurants, not mountain survival. She'd read about people dying 50 feet from roads, invisible in whiteouts. The shaking got worse. Ethan saw the fresh tire marks veering off the highway, subtle depressions in snow that would vanish in minutes. No debris, no obvious crash, but his pararescue training read the story. Vehicle left the road here, recently. He pulled over, engaged his hazards, and grabbed the emergency kit from behind his seat. Same one he'd carried for 15 years, updated and maintained with military precision. The wind tried to rip the door from his hands. The Audi's silhouette emerged from the white like a submarine surfacing. Expensive car, bad angle, driver still inside. Ethan approached carefully, testing the snow depth with each step. The embankment was stable enough. He knocked on the driver's window, loud and sharp. Movement inside. Olivia saw a shape through the foggy glass, broad shoulders, confident movement despite the conditions. Her frozen fingers fumbled with the door lock. When it finally opened, snow and wind invaded immediately. The man who leaned in wore no designer anything, just thick Carhartt coveralls and a knit cap pulled low. His face was weathered, focused, completely calm. "Ma'am, are you injured?" His voice cut through wind without shouting. Training, not volume. I don't think so. My car can handle that later. Right now, we need to get you warm. Can you move your legs? She could. He helped her out, one arm steadying her while she found footing in knee-deep snow. Only then did she recognize him vaguely. Like recognizing a piece of furniture. The janitor from Sterling Tower. The night shift guy. Her mind tried to process this impossibility, while her body began shutting down from cold. Ethan did rapid assessment as they moved. No obvious fractures, pupils responsive, slight hypothermic tremor starting. The designer clothes were useless. Wind chill would drop her core temperature to dangerous levels within minutes. His truck was running, heater on full, 20 yards up a slope that might as well have been Everest in her condition. "Lean on me," he said, shifting to take most of her weight. "We're going to move fast." They struggled up together, her Louboutin heels immediately useless, his boots finding purchase through experience and strength. The truck's cab felt like a miracle of warmth. He wrapped her in the wool army blanket from his emergency kit, cranked the heater higher, and checked her fingers for frostbite. The tips were white but not frozen. "Yet, we need to call," Olivia started. "No signal up here. Storms probably knocked out the towers anyway." He pulled out an old CB radio from under the seat, tried several channels. Static and wind, highway patrols overwhelmed. "Hear that chatter? They're dealing with a pileup near Georgetown." Olivia's corporate instincts kicked in through the cold. "I need to get to Vail. Important meeting." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Even hypothermic and disheveled, she radiated the kind of authority that came from never being told no. He recognized the type from his military days. Officers who got soldiers killed because they couldn't admit weakness. "Ma'am, Vail Pass is closed. Just came through on the emergency band. Nothing's getting through until morning, maybe longer. Then Denver. Also closed. Eisenhower tunnels shut down. Whiteout conditions." The reality settled over her like the snow trapped. No assistants to call, no corporate cards to wave, no authority that mattered to a Colorado blizzard. The shaking started again, harder this time. Ethan recognized shock setting in. He'd seen it in Afghanistan, in car wrecks, in 100 emergencies. The mind protecting itself by shutting down. He kept his voice steady, the tone he'd used to talk wounded soldiers through pain. "There's a ranger station about 8 miles north. Old Forest Service Road. It's rough, but my truck can make it. Has a wood stove, emergency supplies. We wait out the worst there, get you properly warm." "I don't." "Who are you?" "Ethan Carter, ma'am. I work maintenance at your building." The irony would have been funny if she could feel her feet. Saved by the janitor. The invisible man who cleaned up after her empire. She tried to summon the usual executive distance. But her body had moved past, caring about hierarchy. All that mattered was warmth. The Forest Service road was a suggestion buried under 2 feet of snow. Ethan shifted into low gear, reading the terrain through instinct and memory. He'd driven worse in Afghanistan, navigating mountain passes with no lights while insurgents watched. At least here, the mountain was impartial in its hostility. Olivia watched him work hands steady on the wheel, micro-adjustments that kept them moving when physics suggested they shouldn't. No wasted motion, no panic, just competence that didn't need to announce itself. The truck growled through drifts that would have stopped her Audi instantly. Her fingers were beginning to burn, good sign, painful but good, circulation returning. "You've done this before," she said, "not a question. Different mountains. Same physics. Military? Air Force, pararescue." She knew vaguely what that meant, the ones who went in when everything had gone wrong. The ones who jumped into hell to pull others out, and now he mopped her floors. The ranger station materialized from the storm like something from a fairy tale, dark logs and small windows. Solar panels covered in snow. A chimney waiting to breathe smoke. Ethan had to shoulder the door open against accumulated drift. Inside was basic but functional. Single room, wood stove, stacked supplies, emergency radio equipment that might work when the storm passed. He moved with practiced efficiency, checking the flue, starting kindling, building heat in stages. Olivia stood useless in her designer clothes, watching someone who actually knew how to create warmth from nothing. The fire caught, orange light pushing back darkness. The temperature inside began climbing from freezing toward survivable. "Your clothes are wet," Ethan said, pulling a plastic storage box from the corner. Forest Service keeps emergency gear, not fashionable, but dry. She looked at the fleece pants and oversized ranger sweatshirt. A week ago, she'd have thrown them away rather than wear them. Now they looked like salvation. He turned his back while she changed, busying himself with the radio equipment. The wet designer clothes made an expensive pile by the door. When she emerged, transformed into Forest Service chic, something had shifted. The armor was gone. She was just a woman who'd almost died, sitting by a fire while snow tried to bury the world outside. Ethan handed her instant coffee in a metal cup, bitter, hot, perfect. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. He nodded, checking the windows. Snow had blocked the lower panes completely. They were effectively buried, invisible, safe. He pulled out his phone, still no signal, but Lily's photo glowed on the lock screen. Brown eyes like her mother's, gap-toothed grin that could power cities. Olivia saw the photo. "Your daughter? Lily. She's 7. She's beautiful. Your wife must. 2 years ago. Cancer." The words landed between them, simple and devastating. Olivia pulled the rough blanket tighter. She'd fired people whose spouses were dying. Quarterly numbers didn't pause for personal tragedies. The coffee tasted like judgment. "I'm sorry," she said, the executive polish cracking. "Life happens. You adapt." But she heard what he didn't say, how adaptation meant working nights to be there for school mornings. Meant calculating inhaler costs against grocery budgets. Meant swallowing pride to clean toilets because dental insurance didn't come with heroics. The wind screamed against the walls, testing 70-year-old logs. The fire crackled defiance. Ethan fed it steadily, conserving wood while maintaining heat. Olivia watched flames transform pine into light, and wondered when she'd last sat still without spreadsheets or screens. Her hands had finally stopped shaking. "Why pararescue?" she asked. He considered before answering. "Someone has to go get them." That simple? Usually, the simple answers are right. She thought about her father's complex philosophies of power, the elaborate justifications for cruelty he'd called business. Maybe that's why she couldn't sleep anymore, too many complicated answers to simple questions about right and wrong. "I fired 800 people last month," she said suddenly. The words escaped before executive training could stop them. Streamlining. Efficiency optimization. Stock price jumped 2 points. Ethan added another log, watching sparks spiral up the chimney. Did it need doing? The board thought so. The analysts thought so. That's not what I asked. She stared at the fire. Faces she'd never bothered to learn swam in the flames. Middle managers with mortgages, admins with sick kids, lives reduced to line items. "I don't know anymore." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. CEOs didn't have doubts. Sterling leaders especially didn't have doubts. But the mountain didn't care about her title, and neither did the man who'd pulled her from the snow. I've got MREs in my truck, Ethan said, changing the subject with tactical kindness. Not gourmet, but calories. She almost laughed. This morning she'd eaten $40 eggs Benedict at the Brown Palace. Tonight, military rations sounded like a feast. He returned with the meals and chemical heat packs, the kind of efficient food that assumed you had bigger problems than taste. They ate in companionable silence, the storm providing percussion. Beef stew, the package claimed, though the contents suggested otherwise. Olivia found herself genuinely hungry for the first time in weeks. Stress had been her only meal lately, washed down with coffee and ambition. The simple act of eating because her body needed fuel felt revolutionary. Your daughter, she said between bites. Tell me about her. Ethan's face changed, subtle softening that transformed weathered features. Smart. Scary smart. Reads everything. Questions everything. Has this stuffed wolf named Scout that goes everywhere. She wants to be a doctor, but also an astronaut, but also maybe a chef because she likes how soufflés are basically edible chemistry. Asthma? He looked surprised that she'd noticed the inhaler in the photo. Mild, but winters are tough. The dry air. We manage. Good treatment programs at Children's Hospital. Sterling Technologies donates. She stopped. They donated for tax breaks and PR, not because they cared about kids who couldn't breathe. The truth tasted worse than the MRE. We're fine, Ethan said firmly, not pride practicality. You worked with what you had. The radio crackled, suddenly broken voices through static. Ethan adjusted frequencies, caught fragments. Massive pile-up. National Guard mobilized. All passes remain closed. Emergency shelters at capacity. We're here for the night, he said. Maybe longer. Olivia's phone had died hours ago. Her assistant would be panicking. The Tokyo conference call would happen without her. Emails would pile up like snow. For the first time in memory, she couldn't bring herself to care. The corporate world seemed like fiction from this warm circle of firelight. I don't sleep, she said suddenly. Haven't in months. Pills don't work. Meditation doesn't work. My brain won't stop calculating. What are you calculating? Everything. Market projections, hostile takeovers, competitive advantages, weaknesses to exploit. She laughed bitterly. Your job must seem so simple. Ethan's jaw tightened, first sign of actual emotion. My job is making sure 800 people have a clean, safe place to work. I know which bathroom the pregnant admin uses because it's closest when morning sickness hits. I know the security guard studying for his degree on break, so I clean his booth last to give him more time. I know the junior analyst on 32 cries in the supply closet after your meetings, so I leave tissues. Each word landed like a gentle slap. Olivia saw her empire suddenly, not from the top, but from the foundation. The invisible army that kept it functional while she played corporate war games. I didn't mean. You did. It's okay. I've been invisible before. He gestured at the faded tattoo on his forearm, pararescue angel wings. Funny thing about rescue work. Nobody sees you until they're drowning. The wind shifted, hammering the north wall with renewed violence. The old logs groaned but held. Ethan checked the wood supply enough for the night if they were careful. He'd learned resource management in places where running out meant dying. What happened? Olivia asked. Why did you leave? Sarah got sick. Aggressive. 18 months from diagnosis to end. Lily was 5. Someone had to be there. The Air Force didn't give leave? They did. But kids need more than leave. They need presence. Consistency. Knowing you'll be there for every bad dream and good morning. Can't do that deploying every few months. So you gave up your career. I gave up nothing. I chose my daughter. The simple certainty in his voice made Olivia's throat tight. Her father had chosen the company every time. Board meetings over birthdays. Acquisitions over affection. She'd grown up competing with quarterly reports for attention, usually losing. He died alone, she said quietly. My father had a heart attack in his office. Security found him the next morning, still had a pen in his hand. Ethan added another log to the fire, letting her words settle without judgment. I was in Shanghai when it happened. Closing a deal he'd started. Didn't make it back for 3 days. The funeral home had to wait. She pulled the blanket tighter. Everyone said he'd be proud I finished the acquisition first. Were you proud? The question hung in the warm air. Outside, the storm had become white noise, a constant pressure that made the cabin feel smaller, safer. She thought about pride, about the deals won and competitors crushed, about the fear in employees' eyes that she'd mistaken for respect. I haven't felt anything in so long, she admitted. Just operational. Like I'm executing someone else's program. Ethan understood that feeling. The numbness that came after loss, when functioning became performance, and performance became identity. He'd lived it for months after Sarah died, going through motions until Lily laughed at something Scout did, and suddenly feeling crashed back like a tide. Your daughter, Olivia said. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one. He pulled out a battered notebook, sketching something in quick strokes. She recognized the precision architectural or engineering training underlying the pararescue medic. His pencil captured the cabin's structure, but also something more. The way heat moved through space. The points where cold infiltrated. A mind that solved problems by understanding them completely. What are you drawing? Heating system. This cabin's designed for summer rangers. Winter's an afterthought. See here? The stove's placement creates dead zones. Simple deflector system would increase efficiency by 30%. She leaned closer, seeing what he saw: invisible rivers of warm air, pockets where cold pooled like water. It was elegant, practical, the kind of solution that would never occur to someone who hadn't spent time truly cold. You should patent that. He shrugged. Patents cost money. Lawyers cost more. I know lawyers. I'm sure you do. The words weren't accusatory, just factual. She did know lawyers. Armies of them. The kind who could weaponize punctuation and bill more per hour than he made in a week. The distance between their worlds felt astronomical, except here they were, sharing heat while the mountain tried to kill them both. Her eyes were getting heavy first time in weeks. The fire's hypnotic dance, the warm air, the strange safety of being completely cut off from her usual world. Ethan noticed, pulled another blanket from the supply box. Sleep, he said. I'll keep watch. Watch for what? Habit. She wanted to protest, to maintain the fiction that executives don't need rest. But her body had already decided. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was him feeding the fire, guardian against the cold, practicing a vigilance learned in places where sleeping meant trusting someone else with your life. She dreamed of her father's office, but the walls were made of ice. Every spreadsheet she touched froze and shattered. 800 people stood in the corners, silent, watching her try to build a fire from frozen dollars. She woke to gentle shaking and gray dawn light. Storms passing, Ethan said quietly. Radio says plows should reach the forest road by noon. She sat up, disoriented. She'd slept 6 hours straight, miracle or exhaustion, she couldn't tell. Her body felt different. Heavier, but somehow lighter. Like she'd put down something she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten its weight. Ethan had coffee ready, instant again but welcome. Through the window, she saw a world transformed. Snow had buried everything familiar, creating blank pages where landscape used to be. The sky was clearing, revealing mountains that looked painted against blue. Your daughter, she said. You need to call her. Phone's still dead. She knows I'm okay. How? Because I always am. That simple faith, a child's trust that their parent would come home, hit her harder than boardroom betrayals ever had. When had she stopped believing anyone would come home? When had home become just another word for headquarters? They worked together to clear the door, taking turns with the single shovel from the ranger supplies. Physical work felt strange but good, muscles remembering they existed for more than sitting. The storm had dumped 4 feet, maybe more. Ethan's truck was a white monument to Detroit engineering. That's going to take hours to dig out, Olivia observed. Done worse. Always that quiet confidence, competence without performance. She thought about her executives, how they'd panic at a flat tire, call assistants to fix problems that just required willing hands. When had she become that helpless? The CB radio crackled clearer now. Forest Service Road 47, scheduled for clearing by 1400 hours. Emergency vehicles priority. All civilians shelter in place. That's us, Ethan said. Few hours yet. They spent the morning in unexpected ease. He taught her how to properly bank a fire for maximum heat with minimum fuel. She told him about market dynamics with the same patient detail. Both surprised to find the other genuinely interested. Intelligence didn't always wear suits. And wisdom definitely didn't. The sensor project, she said suddenly, remembering. Sterling Tech makes avalanche beacons and emergency locators. We had a design flaw reported last year. Some units failing in extreme cold. I know. You know? I submitted the report. Through the employee safety channel. Used my contractor ID from when I was part-time, before full employment. She stared at him. The report had been buried in committee, deemed statistically insignificant. Less than 0.5% failure rate. Acceptable losses, someone had decided. Someone like her. People are dying from those failures, he said simply. Backcountry skiers, climbers, people who trusted your equipment with their lives. The accusation should have triggered her corporate defenses. Lawyers and liability, and carefully worded non-admissions. Instead, she felt something crack in her chest, painful and necessary like circulation returning to frozen tissue. How many? She asked. 3 confirmed. Probably more unreported. 3 lives, statistical noise in Sterling's billions of revenue. But also 3 Lilies without fathers, 3 Sarahs without husbands. 3 people who'd suffocated in snow because her company chose profit margins over perfection. I need to fix this, she said. You need to fix a lot of things. The plow's rumble reached them before they saw a diesel thunder announcing civilization's return. The operator waved from his cab, continued past, to clear the full road. Within an hour, traffic would be possible. The real world would reclaim them. They loaded the truck in efficient silence, erasing evidence of their presence. The cabin returned to waiting, ready for the next emergency. Olivia looked back once at the small space that had held honesty and warmth. It already felt like a dream. The drive down was anticlimactic. Roads cleared, sun out, other vehicles returning to motion. Ethan's truck handled the packed snow easily, finding its way back to asphalt and obligation. Her Audi would need towing, insurance, paperwork, the infrastructure of inconvenience her assistant would manage. I can drive you home, he offered when they reached the intersection where Denver waited. The hospital. I should get checked. He nodded, understanding the excuse. They both needed transition space between the mountain's truth and the city's performance. The emergency room would provide paperwork and protocols, safe barriers against whatever had shifted between them. Swedish Medical Center's emergency entrance was chaos, the storm's aftermath in triage form. Broken bones from falls, frostbite cases, the pile-up victims. Olivia's corporate insurance card moved her to the front, guilt following like a shadow. Ethan stayed until she was admitted, then vanished with a simple nod. Back to his daughter, his life, his invisible importance. The doctor found nothing wrong that warmth and rest couldn't cure. Minor hypothermia, some bruising, lucky to be alive. The nurse who discharged her mentioned the rescuer. That man who brought you in? He waited 2 hours to make sure you were okay. Even called to check your insurance would cover everything. Don't see that much anymore. Olivia's assistant arrived with a change of clothes, a new phone, and barely contained panic about missed meetings. The transformation back to CEO took minutes. Designer armor, replacing Forest Service fleece, platinum hair, restored to power positioning. But something had changed in the mirror's reflection. She could see the performance now, the careful construction of authority that had nothing to do with strength. Monday arrived with its usual demands. The boardroom filled with vice presidents and anxiety. Everyone performing concern while calculating advantage. Olivia sat in her usual chair, seeing them differently, soft hands that had never held shovels, voices that commanded without competence, expensive suits hiding hollow cores. The Meridian acquisition is complete, CFO Davidson reported. Their patents integrate perfectly with our portfolio. Casualties? She asked. Excuse me? How many people lost their jobs? 87 redundancies. Well within projections. Redundancies. Like they were extra parts, not people with daughters who needed inhalers. She thought about Ethan's careful attention to the janitor's invisible workforce, how he knew their names and needs. When had she stopped seeing faces? The sensor recall, she said, cutting through Davidson's next slide. Where are we on that? Legal recommends against any admission of fault. The failure rate is within industry standards. Industry standards aren't good enough when people die frozen in avalanches. The room went silent. Olivia Sterling didn't do conscience. She did calculations. We're implementing a full recall, she continued. Every unit, regardless of manufacture date, replace them with redesigned models that work at -40. The cost, Davidson started, is less than 3 lives. They stared at her like she'd spoken Mandarin. Ethical mathematics had no place in their equations. She saw Damian Cross in the corner, silver-gray suit perfect as always, calculating how to weaponize this sudden weakness. His thin face showed predator interest, gray eyes mapping vulnerabilities. The meeting continued, but she was only half there. The other half was still in a ranger cabin, learning that competence didn't require credentials, and that some men guarded warmth while others hoarded wealth. That night, she went to Sterling Tower's basement levels, the mechanical floors she'd never visited. The night shift was arriving, invisible army in work clothes. She recognized some faces from firing documents she'd signed without reading. They looked at her with suspicion and fear, wondering who would be redundant next. Ethan was there, teaching a new hire how to operate the floor buffer. Patient, thorough, making sure the kid understood not just how but why. He saw her but didn't acknowledge the CEO observing from the doorway. She was interrupting their real work. She returned to her office and pulled the employee files. Ethan Michael Carter. Hired 6 months ago. Previous employer. United States Air Force. Honorable discharge. Commendations that read like fiction. Current address in a neighborhood she'd never heard of. Emergency contact. Mrs. Chen. Neighbor. For Lily. No one else. They were alone except for kindness of neighbors and strength of character. The next morning, she had IT pull everything from the employee safety portal. Ethan's reports were there detailed, technical, prescient. He'd identified 14 major safety issues, from the sensors to evacuation procedures to the building's heating system creating carbon monoxide pockets. All buried in committee or dismissed as statistically insignificant. Get me the head of facilities, she told her assistant. He's in Palm Beach. Conference on resort management. Of course he was. Managing facilities from a golf course while Ethan Carter kept 800 people safe with institutional knowledge and improvised solutions. Her phone rang. Damien Cross. Olivia, darling, heard you had quite the adventure. Mountain roads can be so dangerous. His voice oozed false concern, the kind of sympathy that preceded a knife in the back. She could picture him perfectly, that distinctive thin face with its high cheekbones and pointed chin, gray eyes cold as the mountain that had tried to kill her. I survived, obviously. Obviously. Though I hear you're making some interesting decisions, full recall? That's going to impact quarterly projections significantly. Lives matter more than quarters, Damien. His laugh was wind through gravestones. Since when? This isn't the Olivia Sterling who destroyed Markham Industries. What happened on that mountain? She wanted to tell him about finding conscience in a cabin, about learning that strength meant knowing when to follow instead of lead. But Damien would weaponize any admission of change, use it to orchestrate her destruction. I'll see you at the industry dinner Thursday, she said instead. Looking forward to it. I have some announcements that might interest you. The threat was subtle but clear. He was planning something. Damien always was tall frame folded over conference tables like a praying mantis, those gray eyes cataloging weaknesses while his diamond-studded watch caught light like a warning. She hung up and returned to the files. Ethan's safety reports were meticulous, but something else caught her attention, a pattern in the timestamps. All submitted between 2 and 4 a.m. His unpaid time, after finishing his actual job. He'd been trying to save lives on his own clock because the system didn't value janitor input. Wednesday night, she waited in the parking garage. Ethan's truck pulled in at 11:47, reliable as sunrise. He saw her but didn't deviate, parking in his usual spot near the service entrance. She walked over, CEO approaching janitor, reversing the usual gravity. Miss Sterling. Olivia, please. He waited, patient. She'd learned he didn't fill silences, didn't feel the executive need to command air. Your reports. The safety issues. I'm implementing all of them. Good. I need someone to head the initiative. Someone who understands both the problems and the people. The position would be Director of Safety Operations. Day shift. Executive salary. He studied her, reading something she couldn't identify. Why? Because you were right. About all of it. That's not why. You've known about these issues for years. The truth sat between them like the fire they'd shared. She could lie, make it about corporate evolution or shareholder value. But he'd saved her life with honest competence. She owed him the same. Because I finally slept. In that cabin. First real sleep in months. And when I woke up, I remembered why I started this company. Before it became about conquering and controlling. And why was that? To build things that helped people. To matter in ways that mattered. He considered this, looking through the concrete ceiling toward where his daughter slept. Day shift means being there when Lily gets home from school. Every day. And I can implement the heating redesign for the whole building? The one that would reduce energy costs by 30% while eliminating the cold zones? You drew that in the cabin. You remember it? I remember everything that matters. She thought he might accept then, but he shook his head. I'll think about it. Give you an answer Monday. CEOs weren't used to waiting for janitor decisions, but then nothing about Ethan Carter fit her usual paradigms. He headed inside to his shift, leaving her in the garage with expensive cars and cheap fluorescent reality. Thursday's industry dinner was at the Brown Palace Old Money, serving new power with 5 courses of networking. Olivia wore her armor, black Valentino, grandmother's diamonds, the kind of presence that parted crowds. She'd played this game since childhood, watching her father work rooms like a conductor managing an orchestra of fear. Damian Cross stood near the bar, his characteristic silhouette unmistakable, tall and thin like a blade. His slicked-back blonde hair gleaming under chandeliers. The silver-gray suit looked painted on his angular frame. When he smiled, his pointed chin made him look like a well-dressed snake. Olivia. Stunning as always. Damian, I have something you should see. He pulled out his phone, showed her a video. Security footage from Sterling Tower's garage. Her conversation with Ethan, grainy but clear enough. Audio too, her admission of weakness, her offer of promotion, her desperate need for his approval. Interesting hiring practices, Damian continued, gray eyes glittering. Promoting a janitor to executive level? The board will have questions. Shareholders too. Especially when they learn you spent a night with him during the storm. The implication was clear, ugly, everything she should have expected from a man who collected leverage like others collected art. It wasn't like that. Doesn't matter what it was like. Only what it looks like. He sipped his martini, diamond watch catching light. I'm willing to keep this quiet. In exchange for certain considerations. What do you want? The sensor patents. Full transfer to Meridian. We'll handle the recall, take the reputation hit. You keep your position, your reputation. Everyone wins. Everyone except the people who die from Meridian's cost-cutting manufacturing. Damian would bury the real fixes, produce something that barely met legal requirements. More Ethans would submit reports that disappeared. More Lilies would lose parents to preventable failures. I need time to consider. The board meets Monday. Decide by then. She left the dinner early, driving through Denver's night streets without destination. The city looked different from ground level, all the invisible people keeping it functional while the powerful slept. She passed Sterling Tower, saw lights in the basement. Ethan's shift, cleaning up after another day of empire building. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Sterling? This is Mrs. Chen. I'm Ethan's neighbor. There's been an accident. The world stopped. Not Ethan. Not after. It's Lily. Severe asthma attack. They're at Children's Hospital. Ethan asked me to call you. I don't know why, but he said you'd want to know. She was moving before the call ended. Valentino dress and grandmother's diamonds racing through emergency room doors for the second time in a week. Different hospital, same chaos, but this time she wasn't the patient. She found them in pediatric intensive care. Lily looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, oxygen mask covering half her face, machines measuring breath and heartbeat. Ethan sat beside her, holding her hand, looking like mountains had finally broken him. She's stable, he said without looking up. The attack was severe. Triggered by something at school. Paint fumes from renovation. Olivia sat in the uncomfortable visitor chair, designer dress pooling around her. What do you need? Nothing. Just. Thank you for coming. You said I'd want to know. You were right. They sat quietly, watching Lily breathe with mechanical assistance. The little girl's stuffed wolf was tucked against her side, standing guard even here. Ethan hadn't let go of her hand, as if his touch could anchor her to the world. The job offer, he said suddenly. If it means better insurance, better care for her, don't. Don't take it for that reason. Then why? Because you're the only person in my company who sees problems before they become tragedies. Because you care about 800 people I've never bothered to notice. Because you know how to keep fires burning when everything wants to go cold. A doctor entered, young and tired and kind. Mr. Carter? She's responding well to treatment. We'll want to keep her overnight for observation, but she should be home tomorrow. Relief transformed Ethan's face, years disappearing in an instant. Olivia felt it too second-hand joy for a child she'd never met but somehow felt responsible for. When had strangers become family? There's a new treatment, the doctor continued. Daily maintenance medication that could prevent attacks like this. It's expensive, often not covered by insurance. Send the bills to Sterling Technologies, Olivia interrupted. All of them. Current and future. The doctor looked confused. Ethan looked stunned. Olivia pulled out her business card, wrote her personal cell on the back. Whatever she needs. No limits, no prior authorizations, no paperwork delays. She gets the best care available. After the doctor left, Ethan finally looked at her directly. Why? Because I can. Because it's right. Because your daughter deserves to breathe easily. She stood, smoothing her ridiculous dress. And because Damian Cross is trying to blackmail me, and I'm tired of people like him deciding who suffers. She explained about the video, the threat, the Monday board meeting. Ethan listened without interrupting, tactical mind processing information like he'd processed the mountain storm calmly, completely. You have the employee safety portal reports, he said finally. All of them. Including the analysis showing Meridian's manufacturing caused the failures? The one I submitted under my contractor ID? She hadn't seen that one. He gave her the file number from memory. Of course he'd documented everything. Of course he'd traced the problem to its source. Invisible didn't mean unintelligent. That's whistleblower protected, he continued. If Damian buried it to protect Meridian, if people died because of that. Criminal liability. Not just civil. He doesn't know you have it. Doesn't know I wrote it. Olivia saw the chessboard suddenly, all pieces in play. Damian thought he held leverage with a garage conversation. She held evidence of manslaughter through negligence. The thin, gray-eyed predator had finally overplayed his hand. Monday's board meeting, she said. Would you come? As my director of safety operations, I don't own a suit. Wear your coveralls. Let them see who really keeps them safe. Lily stirred, tiny hand gripping her father's tighter. Her eyes opened brown like the photo, bright despite the oxygen mask. Daddy? Right here, baby. Scout? He tucked the stuffed wolf closer. He's here too. Everyone's here. Her eyes found Olivia, curious despite the medication haze. Pretty lady. This is Miss Sterling, Ethan said. She's a friend. Is she why you came home late? Mrs. Chen made mac and cheese, but it wasn't the same. I'll be home on time from now on. Promise. The trust in Lily's eyes as she drifted back to sleep was complete, absolute. Olivia felt something fracture in her chest all the times her father hadn't come home, all the promises broken for board meetings, all the mac and cheese dinners eaten alone. Monday, Ethan said quietly. I'll be there. She left them together, father and daughter and stuffed wolf, guarding each other through the night. The parking garage's fluorescent lights felt like another world. Her phone had 17 missed calls from her assistant. The corporate world spinning without her, which meant it could spin without her. Revolutionary thought. The weekend passed in preparation. She pulled every document, built her case with the methodical precision her father had taught her. But this time, she was building something more than corporate victory. She was building justice for 800 invisible people and 3 who'd died in avalanches. Monday morning arrived gray and promising snow. Ethan was waiting in Sterling Tower's lobby, wearing his best work clothes, clean Carhartt coveralls and a flannel shirt. Next to the suits flowing past, he looked like exactly what he was, someone who worked for a living. Lily? Olivia asked. Home, breathing easy. Mrs. Chen's watching her. She sends thanks for the pretty lady who helped. They rode the executive elevator in silence. 42nd floor, where decisions were made by people who'd never calloused their hands. The boardroom was already full, 12 members in $1,000 suits, plus Damian Cross in his signature silver gray. Positioned like a gargoyle at the table's far end. Olivia, the board chairman, started. We've heard some concerning rumors. You'll hear concerning facts instead. She connected her laptop to the presentation system. 3 people are dead because we knowingly sold defective equipment. The man who identified the problem, whose reports were buried, is standing right here. Ethan stepped forward, and she saw the board's confusion janitor in the boardroom, Competence in coveralls. Damian's thin face sharpened with interest, gray eyes calculating new angles. This is Ethan Carter, Olivia continued. Air Force pararescue veteran, father, and the man who's been keeping your employees safe despite systematic neglect of his safety reports. She walked them through everything, the buried analyses, the failure rates, the deaths that followed. Then she played her ace. Ethan's report proving Meridian's manufacturing had caused the failures, dated 18 months ago, formally submitted through protected whistleblower channels. Interesting, Damian said, his voice silk over steel. But hardly relevant to Miss Sterling's questionable judgment in promoting a janitor. The janitor who saved my life, Olivia interrupted. While you were calculating how to profit from it. She pulled up the next slide, emails between Damian and Meridian's manufacturing head, discussing cost reductions that would compromise cold weather performance. Dated after Ethan's report. They'd known and proceeded anyway. Damian's pointed chin lifted, a snake recognizing a threat. You can't prove. I can prove you received the whistleblower report. Your signature's on the routing slip. She showed the document. You had knowledge of potentially fatal flaws and chose profit over lives. That's criminally negligent homicide. The boardroom erupted. Accusations, denials, lawyers being summoned. Through it all, Ethan stood quietly at military rest, presence more powerful than any presentation. He was truth in work clothes, competence without compromise. Motion. Olivia said over the chaos. For immediate recall of all affected units, full implementation of Mr. Carter's safety recommendations, and his appointment as Director of Safety Operations. Seconded, said Margaret Walsh from the far end. The oldest board member, who'd built her fortune in mining, and knew what real work looked like. The vote was close, but sufficient. Damien left without a word, his tall frame folding through the doorway like a closing knife, gray eyes promising this wasn't over. But Olivia had his signature on a corpse-creating decision. Mutual assured destruction, the kind of détente her father would have appreciated. Mr. Carter, the board chairman said formally. Welcome to Sterling Technologies' executive team. Ethan nodded, shook the offered hands, then did something none of them expected. He pulled out his battered notebook and began sketching on the whiteboard the building's heating system, its inefficiencies, his solutions. We're wasting $3 million annually on heating, he said, drawing airflows with practiced ease. More importantly, we're creating environments where people can't work safely. Cold zones, carbon monoxide pockets, humidity imbalances that trigger respiratory issues. Here's how we fix it. They listen because competence commands attention, even from those who usually commanded everything. Olivia watched them learn what she'd learned in a cabin, that wisdom didn't always wear ties, and the people they'd considered redundant might be the ones keeping them alive. The transition wasn't smooth. Executives who'd never noticed Ethan suddenly had to report to him. He handled their condescension with the same patience he'd shown teaching the new hire to buff floors. Results spoke louder than resentment. Within a month, workplace injuries dropped 40%. The heating redesign would save millions. The recall was executed flawlessly, with Ethan personally overseeing the replacement unit's cold weather testing. Olivia found herself sleeping better. Not perfectly, years of insomnia didn't vanish overnight, but when she lay awake, she thought about lives saved instead of competitors crushed. It was a different kind of calculation, one that balanced better. Damien Cross made one last play. A shareholder lawsuit, questioning the board's judgment, demanding Olivia's removal. It gained traction until the families of the avalanche victims publicly thanked Sterling Technologies for taking responsibility. Hard to argue with grieving widows praising corporate conscience. The lawsuit dissolved. Damien retreated to Meridian Dynamics, his reputation damaged but not destroyed. Predators like him always survived, just moved to different hunting grounds. His thin shadow still haunted industry events, gray eyes still calculating, but Sterling Technologies was no longer vulnerable to his particular brand of venom. Spring arrived gradually, then suddenly. The mountains shed their snow, revealing the green beneath. Olivia found herself at a company picnic, something she'd never attended before, considering them wastes of productive time. But Ethan had suggested it, and she was learning to trust his instincts about people. Lily was there, running with other employees' children, breathing easily thanks to daily medication that actually worked. Scout, the wolf, had been joined by Scout Jr. because he needed a friend, Lily had explained with 7-year-old certainty. She looks good, Olivia said. Finding Ethan by the grill he was manning with the same attention he gave everything. She's herself again, that's all I wanted. And you? Are you yourself? He considered while flipping burgers. Getting there. Remembering I'm more than just her father. That maybe I can be good at other things too. You're exceptional at other things. Including cooking burgers? Especially cooking burgers. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Sterling Technologies employees exist as humans instead of resources. Families, laughter, children playing while adults pretended they weren't also playing. The invisible workforce visible in sunlight, valued for more than their functions. I owe you something, Ethan said quietly. You don't owe me anything. An answer. To the question you asked in the cabin. About why I really do this job. She waited, learning his patience. After Sarah died, I thought about dying too. Not suicide, just stopping. Letting the next mission be the last, going out serving. Lily would have benefits, good memories, a hero father instead of a broken one. The admission hit like mountain wind, unexpected and raw. But then I'd watch her sleep, see Sarah in her face, and realize that heroes aren't who kids need. They need presence. Someone who shows up, who does the work, who proves that life continues even when it feels impossible. He adjusted the grill's temperature with unconscious precision, so I became a janitor, because it was work I could do while being present. Because cleaning things felt like creating order from chaos. Because every night, I made spaces better for people who'd never know I existed, and that felt like a kind of service too. They know now, Olivia said. You exist. You matter. Do I? Or am I just another executive they'll forget when the next crisis hits? She thought about her father, dying alone with a pen in his hand, remembered by no one except lawyers executing his will. Then she looked at Lily laughing, at employees approaching Ethan with genuine warmth, at the community he'd built through simple competence and care. You're unforgettable, she said. Trust me. I've been trying to forget you since the mountain, and I can't. He looked at her directly then, seeing past the CEO to whoever she was becoming. Why would you want to forget? Because remembering means changing. And change is terrifying when you've built your whole life on control. Control's an illusion. Mountains teach that quickly. So does parenthood, I imagine. So does love. The word hung between them, unexpected and carefully placed. Not a declaration, just acknowledgement of possibility. They were both too damaged for fairy tales, too practical for promises. But something was building between them, patient and solid like a fire in a cold cabin. Miss Sterling. Lily appeared, Scout Jr. clutched in one hand, face painted like a tiger. Dad says you saved my medicine. Is that true? Your dad saved my life first. I was just returning the favor. Lily considered this with serious eyes. That's how friendship works, my teacher says. You help each other. Your teacher's smart. She also says we should thank people who help us, so thank you. She hugged Olivia quickly, fiercely, then ran back to her games before adult emotions could get complicated. Ethan watched his daughter go, love and pride visible even through his habitual reserve. She's not wrong. About friendship. Is that what this is? Starting place, maybe. We've got time to figure out the rest. Time. Such a simple thing, but revolutionary for people who'd been racing against different clocks, him against poverty and loss, her against expectations and emptiness. The idea of having time, of things developing naturally instead of being forced, felt like luxury neither had imagined affording. The sun was setting, painting the mountains gold. The same peaks that had tried to kill them now stood beautiful and indifferent, reminding everyone that nature didn't care about their titles or traumas. You survived by helping each other, or you didn't survive at all. There's going to be another storm, Ethan said, reading the clouds with practiced eyes. Late season, probably significant. Good thing we know how to build fires. Good thing we know how to share warmth. Margaret Walsh approached, the board member who'd seconded Ethan's appointment. 80 years old, built her fortune with actual hands before lawyers made it legal. Mr. Carter, she said formally, then broke into a grin. Hell of a burger. Haven't had one this good since my construction days. Secrets in not overthinking it, ma'am. Secrets in caring about the result. She turned to Olivia. Your father would hate everything about this. Good. He was a brilliant bastard, but still a bastard. You're becoming something better. She walked away, leaving truth in her wake like contrails. Olivia's father would hate this, the picnic, the janitor turned executive, the daughter becoming human instead of weapon. But he was dead, holding a pen, and she was alive, holding possibility. I need to tell you something, Olivia said. About Damien Cross. The vulture who tried to destroy you? He's not done. Men like him never are. He'll come at the company another way, or at you, or at me. It's what he does. Let him come. Ethan's voice carried the same calm certainty it had in the blizzard. I've faced worse than corporate predators. This isn't Afghanistan. The rules are different. No, they're not. You protect your people, maintain your position, and wait for the enemy to make mistakes. They always do, especially when they think they're superior. She thought about Damien's thin face, those calculating gray eyes, the way he moved through the world like everything was already his. He'd make mistakes. Predators got overconfident when they'd fed too long without challenge. Together, then, she asked. Together. The picnic was ending, families drifting toward cars, children protesting bedtime. Lily collected Scout and Scout Jr., yawning despite her determination to stay awake. She'd crashed from sugar and excitement, the good exhaustion of a day fully lived. We should go, Ethan said. School tomorrow. For both of you. Aren't you teaching that workplace safety seminar? Trying to. Harder to teach executives than soldiers. Soldiers know they don't know everything. Revolutionary concept in corporate America. They walked toward the parking lot, Lily between them, holding both their hands because, as she explained, Scout Jr. needs both paws free. The mathematics of 7-year-old logic, unassailable and perfect. Olivia, Ethan said quietly over Lily's head. Thank you. For all of it. Thank you for showing me how to see. You always could see. You just needed someone to adjust the scope. His truck was parked next to her new car. She'd traded the Audi for something more practical, though practical still meant luxury in her vocabulary. The contrast made her laugh, remembering another parking lot, another night, when they'd been stranger and CEO instead of whatever they were becoming. Dinner? She asked. Later this week? Somewhere Lily would like? She's been asking about the place with fancy mac and cheese. Apparently Mrs. Chen's version has set a high bar. I know somewhere. Thursday? Thursday. They separated into their vehicles, but the connection remained. Not love, not yet, but the foundation for it. Built on mutual respect, shared survival, and the recognition that strength came in different forms. Some people conquered, some people rescued. The lucky ones learned to do both. The storm Ethan had predicted arrived Thursday afternoon, postponing dinner but not the promise of it. Olivia watched from her office as snow erased Denver again, covering the city's sins and structures with temporary equality. Somewhere out there, Ethan was implementing emergency protocols, making sure Sterling's employees got home safely. His safety systems had already prevented 14 accidents, according to the metrics he'd established. Enjoying the storm? His voice was winter-given sound. To congratulate you. The janitor was an inspired choice. Very progressive. He's more qualified than half our board, I'm sure. Military heroes make great symbols, though I wonder how he'll handle the spotlight when certain photographs surface. What photographs? Oh, nothing serious. Just him entering your hotel room in Vail, that night after the storm. Amazing what security cameras capture. There had been no hotel, no impropriety, but truth rarely mattered less than perception. Damien would craft a narrative, leak it strategically, let speculation do his destroying. You're really that petty? I'm really that thorough. Enjoy your victory, Olivia. It won't last. He hung up, leaving poison in the air. She thought about calling Ethan, warning him, but he was managing a crisis. Personal attacks could wait for people to get home safely. Her phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. Roads bad. Staying at tower tonight to monitor systems. Lily's with Mrs. Chen. Rain check on dinner? She texted back agreement, then made a decision. If Ethan was staying, so was she. The executive floor had couches, showers, the pretense of civilization. But that's not where she went. The mechanical floors hummed with purposeful noise. Boilers, ventilation, the building's actual heart. She found Ethan at a monitoring station, tracking weather data and system performance with the same focus he'd shown reading mountain roads. Thought you'd gone home, he said without looking up. Thought the same about you. Someone needs to watch. Make sure the heating stays balanced, the emergency generators are ready. Building's got 800 people depending on it tomorrow. Show me. He did. For hours, he taught her how Sterling Tower actually worked, the intricate systems that created light and heat and air. The redundancies that prevented catastrophe. The small adjustments that meant everything. It was like learning anatomy, understanding that buildings were bodies that could sicken or strengthen depending on their care. Your father never came down here, Ethan said around midnight, adjusting a pressure valve with practiced ease. He never went anywhere that didn't have windows and wood paneling. His loss. This is where truth lives. Can't lie to a boiler about pressure. Can't negotiate with electricity about load limits. Things either work or they don't. Is that why you like it? The honesty? Part of it. Also the puzzles. Every system's a problem waiting to be solved better. She watched him work, hands sure and scarred, reading gauges like vital signs. This was mastery without audience, competence as its own reward. Her father had performed power. Ethan simply was powerful, in all the ways that actually mattered. Damien called, she said. He's planning something. Good? Means he's scared. Desperate enemies make mistakes. You're not worried? About a man who's never been cold, never been hungry, never held his daughter while she couldn't breathe? No, he's playing a game. We're living life, different stakes. The building groaned gently, adjusting to temperature differentials. Ethan made a note, would investigate tomorrow. Always maintaining, always preventing rather than repairing. She thought about her company. How much was broken that she'd never bothered preventing? I want to learn, she said. All of it. How to actually run things, not just command them. That's a long education. I've got time. Do you? CEOs aren't known for patience. I'm not my father's kind of CEO anymore. He looked at her then, reading something in her face that spreadsheets had never shown. No. You're not. They worked until dawn, when the storm exhausted itself and the city began breathing again. Ethan had been right, the heating system held. The power stayed stable. 800 people would arrive to a functional building because someone had cared enough to watch through the night. Breakfast? Olivia offered. I know a place that's always open. Lily. We'll sleep until noon if Mrs. Chen lets her. Storm days are pajama days, according to my assistant who has 3 kids. They went to a diner that served construction workers and medical residents, people who worked while others slept. Ethan fit perfectly. Olivia, in her day-old designer clothes, didn't. But the coffee was strong and the eggs were real, and the waitress called them both on with equal disregard for hierarchy. This is nice, Ethan said, and she knew he meant more than breakfast. It is. Different from the Brown Palace. Better than the Brown Palace. Why? She thought about it, watching him add exactly the right amount of cream to his coffee, no measurement needed. Because it's real. Because nobody's performing. Because the food's about feeding people, not impressing them. That why you changed? I haven't changed. I'm just remembering who I was before I forgot. Who were you? A girl who wanted to build things that helped people. Who thought business could be about more than conquest. She laughed, bitter and tired. My father fixed that pretty quickly. But not permanently. No. Thanks to a janitor who wouldn't let me freeze. You wouldn't have frozen. You're tougher than you think. Maybe. But I would have stayed frozen. Different kind of cold. The diner filled with morning shift workers, men and women with calloused hands and tired eyes, and the kind of strength Olivia was learning to recognize. They nodded at Ethan, sensing kinship. Some probably worked at Sterling Tower, might recognize her if they looked closer. But nobody looked closer. She was just a woman having breakfast with a man, simple as breathing. Damien's going to come after us, she said. After you, specifically. He'll try to make you look like an opportunist, maybe worse. Let him. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone's got something. Sure. But shame's about secrets, and I don't keep those anymore. Too expensive. She thought about her own secrets, the insomnia, the pills, the crying in private bathrooms when the weight got too heavy. Maybe secrets were expensive. Maybe that's why she'd started sleeping again, after telling truth in a cabin to a man who cleaned floors. Lily asked about you, Ethan said, changing subjects with tactical kindness. Wanted to know if the pretty lady was going to be around more. What did you tell her? That I hoped so. Good answer. True answer. They finished breakfast as the city woke around them. The storm had passed, leaving Denver clean and white and new. The mountains stood clear against blue sky, beautiful and indifferent as always. Olivia thought she could see Vail Pass from here, the place where everything had changed. Or maybe started changing. Maybe change was always happening, and you just needed a blizzard to notice. The promised dinner finally happened the next week. A place that did indeed serve fancy mac and cheese alongside actual cuisine. Lily pronounced it acceptable but not as good as Mrs. Chen's, which she whispered was because Mrs. Chen puts love in it. The wisdom of children, unassailable. Damien made his move 2 weeks later. The photos were artfully edited, suggesting impropriety where none existed. The business press ran with it, CEO and Janitor, Beauty and Beast, a dozen narratives that missed the truth by miles. Olivia's board called emergency sessions. Her phone exploded with crisis management offers. She ignored them all. Instead, she called a press conference. Not in Sterling Tower's sterile media room, but in the basement, surrounded by the mechanical systems Ethan had taught her to read. She wore work clothes, jeans, and a Sterling Technologies maintenance shirt. Ethan stood beside her in his usual coveralls. Lily was at school, protected from adult stupidity by multiplication tables and geography lessons. 2 months ago, Olivia began, I nearly died in a blizzard. The man beside me saved my life. Not because he was paid to, not because he recognized me, but because that's who he is, someone who saves people. She told the whole story. The storm, the cabin, the fire they'd built against the cold. Ethan's competence, his grace, his refusal to leverage her gratitude. The safety reports he'd filed, the lives that could have been saved if anyone had listened to the janitor. Sterling Technologies has promoted Ethan Carter because he's exceptional at keeping people safe. The fact that he did it while mopping floors says more about our blindness than his worth. If recognizing talent regardless of title is scandalous, then we're guilty. The questions came fast and harsh. She answered them all, with Ethan adding technical details when needed. He never defended himself, just explained systems and solutions with the patience of someone who taught terrified recruits to jump from planes. Then Margaret Walsh arrived, the ancient board member who'd built her fortune with actual hands. She pushed through reporters like Moses through the Red Sea. 50 years ago, she announced to the cameras, "I was a secretary who saw ways to run mining operations better." A man like Ethan Carter, military hero, single father, someone who'd saved the owner's daughter from freezing, gave me a chance. That man was Harrison Sterling, Olivia's grandfather. The room went silent. Olivia stared at Margaret, seeing her father's origin story rewritten. Harrison wasn't always a bastard, Margaret continued. He became one. Forgot where he came from, what mattered. His son was worse, born into power, never questioned it. But Olivia's remembered something both of them forgot. That companies are built by people who work, not people who watch. She turned to the cameras. Any shareholder who has a problem with promoting competence over credentials can sell their stock to me. I'll buy every share, because a company that values janitors who save lives is a company that will survive anything. The narrative shifted instantly. From scandal to redemption, from impropriety to inspiration. The stock price jumped. Applications flooded in from people wanting to work for a company that saw them. Ethan's safety initiatives became industry standards, copied but never quite replicated because they missed the essential element: actually caring. Damian Cross made one final attempt, a hostile takeover, leveraging every asset Meridian Dynamics had. It might have worked, except the employees Olivia had learned to see fought back. 800 people who'd been invisible made themselves visible, organizing a grassroots campaign that painted Meridian as corporate locusts and Sterling as a company that valued its people. The takeover failed. Damian retreated to whatever cave sharks return to when the water gets too clean. His thin shadow disappeared from industry events, gray eyes seeking darker waters to hunt in. Summer arrived with its own challenges. Lily got stronger, breathing easier with good treatment and clean air. Ethan implemented safety systems that became national models. Olivia learned to sleep without pills, to lead without cruelty, to build instead of conquer. They never announced themselves as a couple. It happened gradually, like seasons changing. First dinner became dinners. Watching Lily's soccer practice became a shared Saturday ritual. Ethan teaching Olivia about building systems became Olivia teaching him about building companies. Not conquest, but construction. Making things that lasted because they were built on solid foundations. "I love you," she said one evening, watching him teach Lily to read blueprints at their kitchen table. The words escaped without planning, true things often do. He looked up, smiled rare and transformative. "I know, that's all, you know? I've known since you stayed in the basement during the second storm. When you could have gone home but chose to learn about boilers instead. That's when you knew I loved you? That's when I knew you loved more than yourself. Same thing, really." Lily looked between them with 7-year-old wisdom. "Does this mean Olivia's going to be around for Christmas?" "Because Scout wants to know if he should ask for a sister." They laughed, all three of them, while Denver's lights glittered beyond the window and mountains stood guard against the sky. Not a fairy tale ending, but something better. A beginning built on competence and kindness, on seeing the invisible and valuing the essential, on learning that sometimes the janitor saves the CEO, but really, they save each other. Sterling Technologies became something new. Not softer business, still required sharp edges, but conscious. Aware that every empire depends on the people who clean it, maintain it, make it possible for the visible